call. In order. And let's see. Motion to adopt the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to go through it?
So moved. Second.
We have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Well, I guess we don't do the pledge for this one, but we'll do the pledge anyway. We'll stand for the pledge. And Bert, would you please start us off?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have the distribution, well, of first responders funds. And they are all listed. And this is something that we had started back doing, I believe a couple of years ago. We had stopped for a while and then we started again, so. And each county gets a percentage depending on the size of the county,
Township.
a township, I'm sorry.
And these were all budgeted, so these are all part of the 2023 budget.
You just need a motion.
Yes,
So, okay, I'll move that motion. I'll make that motion.
motion by Jesse,
I'll support.
support by Bill, all in favor?
Just a quick question, if I may. Are these loading, since this is the first month of the quarter, so these are front loaded and not at the end of the quarter, correct?
Yeah, because these are all of this money right now lives in the fund. And so we need to transfer it over so that it's in those budget lines for it to be spent out of.
This is not FY '22, this is FY '23.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you so much. Thank you, there, Chairman. Appreciate the indulgence.
Sorry for asking, didn't ask. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call that,
Oh,
Brenda.
because we're spending money.
Yep.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Osmer,
Yes.
Commissioner Francisco,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fournier.
Yes. Now, does this have to go through Means and Ways Finance? Because I read that memo.
So this is a question of procedure that really is up to you guys as commissioners and the chair. If there is already a recommendation as to where that money is coming from, the line item and how it's being funded, you can refer it to Finance Ways and Means, or it can be referred straight to full board. I know the treasurer has a preference for all of that going to the Finance Ways and Means Committee, which certainly is, we can just do it that way. Or because this committee has recommended it, you've had a discussion about where it can be funded, it could go straight onto full board. In either case, the full Board of Commissioners has an opportunity to review it and to ratify the recommendation of the committee.
So what is the board?
Send it right to full board to next week then.
Well, that packet's already gone out, so this
Okay.
actually would go to the
That's
Finance,
right.
Ways and Means Committee, so,
Those are ways and means.
which, I mean, full board.
Yeah.
Right, next, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Steve, IT Director, you have updates.
Yep, and Steve is not able to be here today, so I said I would give you the quick update. So the phone system, the phones have been ordered. So as soon as he has a better idea of the delivery date, then we will start with the rollout, and he will give us the days on which he will need to do a shutdown. Hopefully it will be over a weekend because we will need to shut the whole system down and get that installed. The website's rolling forward. There is actually a beta site up. It's looking nice. All of the content is due to the website, the company that's handling that for us by the 20th of this month, and then they will get it loaded. They are looking at a full launch of the website by April.
Any questions? No, hearing none. Okay, we will move on to Kim Elke, Director of the Emergency Management. Hi, Kim.
Hello. So just briefly before my item on the agenda, I'm sure you all noticed that the construction crew arrived earlier this week to start the foundation for the tower project. Because of the weather, they decided to hold off. And my understanding, the last update I received is they're going to wait until Monday because the weather was going to hamper it and they didn't want to leave exposed holes over the weekend because the fence has been removed. They're still planning to stack the tower in February. And so that's the latest update I have on that. So the item we have on the agenda today is related to the recent outage that we had at 911. And I'm pleased to introduce to you Tim McGee. He is the program director at PFN, Peninsula Fiber Network, who's our fiber provider. He is their program director for their next generation 911 program. And he is joining us today and he'll be able to explain in better detail than I am able to what happened recently with our 911 service. Tim?
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to come in and talk to you about this via Zoom. On January the 10th at approximately 15:19 or 3:19 p.m., we had a system error in our transport network, which basically resulted in a database corruption. So within the transport network, we have multiple nodes or points of interconnection for transporting our data across the network from one point to another. And basically that corruption caused a hardware and a software mismatch, which resulted in some calls not being completed as expected, or some calls that lack critical caller and address information. And I think you guys have a copy of the press release or the media release. I do not have the reason for outage from the engineering group yet. And I will share that after they have completed or finalized their root cause analysis. So basically, but I can tell you in a nutshell what happened. Basically, you have a corruption or a system error in the network, and it overloads other parts of the network nodes. And there's probably about 55 nodes within the network. They're all based on a ring architecture. And when it overloads a node, it just creates issues. And, you know, during what the PSAPs or the dispatch centers experienced were some calls would complete just fine. Anti-alley, data information, caller and address information was accurate and good. And then some calls didn't. Maybe they had one-way audio. Maybe the caller didn't get through. Things like that. So once this issue was identified, within a few minutes, we had a bridge open with all of the dispatch directors to kind of, you know, share what we were seeing and troubleshoot the problem, and ensure that calls were routed appropriately. So at about 4:43, we had everything kind of put back together, but the network was still open. And what I mean by open is we didn't have the redundancies ready to be able to be used. So there was some additional work that was done during the late afternoon and evening hours, and you know, resolve the issue. Now, this is similar to an issue that occurred back on the 21st of November. And during that time on our root cause analysis, we identified that some of the nodes failing equipment. So we're replacing those. We have approximately $6 million that we've invested so far in this. And we will, get on with making sure that it's up and running so that 911 calls are completed as we expect to. We apologize for this. We don't want this to happen. We've built our network to the industry standards. And included redundancies that exceed the industry standards. But when you get a data storm in the network, it corrupts a lot of things. So we are expecting that work should commence before the end of this month, and we will have a couple of months of putting the new stuff in and getting things back into the specifications that we want. I guess I would at this point stop and say, are there any questions that I can answer?
Yes, this is Bert Francisco, Tim.
Hi, Bert.
In your press release, it says here the redundancy mechanism that supports the network then malfunctioned, causing statewide disruption. Did one cause the other, or are these two separate and distinct issues?
One caused the other.
Okay.
So basically, what happens when you get this activity occurring is a data storm creates. It just floods the network with data, and it overloads the different nodes, and it doesn't let the data that you want to pass through go through the network. So it corrupts it, and that's essentially what happened that caused that across the state.
Any more questions?
Did that answer your question, Bert?
Yeah, it did, Tim. Thank you. Yeah, I got it. I just, yes, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, I would also like to say that you may have seen a recent newspaper article about a merger with Win Communications. Essentially, we have purchased Win Communications. It's a small telephone company located in. They got an office in in Gaylord and one in Mount Pleasant, and we've purchased their assets and we'll be adding them to our network. So I just want to make sure there was some kind of misunderstanding in the 911 community that we were merging, and what kind of impact this actually should just be a seamless purchase from the customer's perspective, and we believe that it's going to strengthen our network.
Had this happen very often?
No.
I'd just like to comment to Kim and her 911 staff. It appears that it was very quickly after it was discovered that your staff got out the message that on everybody's cell devices that scared the bejeebers out of me, but that's okay. To indicate that the non-emergency number was the one to use. So well done there, Kim, to you and your staff.
Thank you. I would like to say, while of course we always want everything to work ideally, the staff at our 911 center, they immediately went to our backup procedures. And just one example, last week at Intergovernmental Council, PFN had a rep there, and he sought me out immediately at the break and said, "How was your week?" And I said, we were fine. We went to our backup procedures. We had a brief conversation about that. One of the fire chiefs happened to be standing within proximity and overheard our conversation. He immediately came up to me and said, "What are you talking about? What happened?" And I said, "We had a 911 outage." And he said, "News to me." And he said the same thing. Kudos to the staff that they didn't miss a beat. Everything kept going. I did have a media inquiry wondering if there were any life-threatening calls that came in during that time. There were not any, thankfully. But I give all the credit to the staff because they know immediately what to do and they just jump on it and take care of it. But I greatly appreciate Tim's willingness to come and explain it in much better terms than I would have been able to.
Thank you, Kim. No more questions? Okay, thank you very much for coming and explaining it to us. I appreciate it. And thank you, Kim, for what you've done.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is Mary Catherine.
Yes, we received a request from the Road Commission to roll the funds that were unspent from 2022 into 2023 for the purchase of the public-private road signs. This is something that's typically budgeted out of the ambulance fund, 911 fund dollars. There is $2,000 that is already budgeted for 2023. I think their expectation is that because they didn't spend anything in 2022, that they'll be making a large order of those and will need additional funds. And so that was the request to roll those dollars forward from 2022 that were unspent.
So they want an additional 2,000 added to the 2 that was already rolled forward.
That was already budgeted for 2023.
Normally, that's all we keep in there is the 2,000. Okay, do I have a motion?
I move that we take the FY '22 amount of $2,000 and roll that into the FY '23 line item for public-private road signs.
Do I have support?
Support.
A motion support, discussion?
This will be budget adjustment, so it'll have to go before Ways and Means, right?
Yes.
So this will get carried on to the Ways and.
Yep, yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Well, money, Brenda.
Roll call?
Commissioner Francisco?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Osmer?
Yes.
Commissioner Fournier?
Yes. Okay, motion carried. Child Care Fund monthly report that is attached. Would you like to give us the report? Thank you.
Is the worst
We do-
angle, and that's why I zoom in all the time.
Do it.
Don't say you much.
I do not consider myself a vain person until I see how I look on this, and then I'm like, what is this? Maybe like a higher angle, I'm not sure. For December of 2022, we had revenue in the amount of $51,636.54. Expenses in the amount of $14,226.68. That was intentional because we had very little cash in the child care fund in December. So I carried some bills over to January. The end of the month balance looks all right at 101,893, but our actual balance, because of the way the report comes from, and it's not the treasurer's office, but it's the way they do the accounting and the accrual. They only post money due to the state once a year. So even after I get it in, it still looks like I have it there. So all of last year, it looked like I had $60,000 more than I did in my budget. So when you go to like that 86, my actual cash in the child care fund right now is closer to about 15,000. I anticipate I may need an allocation increase this year, and not really because of an increase in billing, but more because of the delay in reimbursement from the state. We're getting more money in basic grant this year. We'll get $45,000 more in 100% grant money for fiscal year 23 than we got in fiscal year 22. Our reimbursement is still at 50%, but there's talk that's going to increase to 75% before the end of this fiscal year. I just have such a large gap sometimes between reimbursements that fund balance goes low. And unfortunately for the county, statutorily, these bills have to be paid if the judge signs them. So, and this committee wouldn't know it, but years ago, the county in November learned that the child care fund had been overspent to the tune of about $350,000. There was a whole, ultimately, because the law is written the way it was, the county had to come up in November, December with $350,000 to put in the child care fund. I come and report every month to hopefully prevent that. And I certainly don't want to be in a position where the county's having to pull $250,000 out of general fund dollars to put into the child care fund. But I do think if not this month, next month, we're going to have to talk about a one-time allocation. I know 2 or 3 years ago, we had a lot of permanent wards in very expensive placements. The county did give us $100,000 in March. I think I asked for 2, got 100, and we got through. So I don't know that I'm going to need $100,000. My thought process, and I do have to run it by the judge, but my thought process is even to ask for $50,000 allocation right now, and hopeful that when you talk to me, when the 75% reimbursement goes through, that the child care fund may be in a position to replace that general fund money. Like I said, the increase in basic grant should cut those. I mean, we've got a $40,000 increase right off the top. So that will be helpful. I'm just having a cash flow problem right now.
As we all are.
Oh, yeah, I personally, the child care fund is having a cash flow
I
problem.
know. So are you asking for it now or did?
Well, I didn't prepare it, so it feels maybe unfair is the word to say, oh, by the way, could you tell full board next week I'd like 50 grand? I do think it needs to be reduced to a memo. I do think you need the opportunity to review historically what we've looked at. I'm just trying to prepare you so that when I come back next month and say, oh, remember I said 50? Turns out I need 80. I'm hopeful that's not going to happen. But just to give you an idea of where we're at, so when you do get the memo, it's not the first time you're hearing of it and you're not blindsided.
How's the placements going?
We're low right now. We have 2 county-funded kids out of home right now, but that's more due to lack of availability of beds than it is due to the need. We are, and I know I say it every month, I feel like I'm holding my breath every month. We have some incredibly dangerous kids, and if 2 of them take a hard left, the county is going to really be hit because we're placing, my listserv right now, I think they just went to Arizona. And I think the bed was $900 a day. And you do the math, $900 a day for 9 months is an ungodly amount of taxpayer money.
Is there anything more progress with Eric at the jail?
We've met and talked a couple of times. I'm kind of in a holding pattern. I developed what I believe to be a preliminary budget that I think looks okay. We had spoken to Mary Catherine about perhaps getting a committee together to do this. She suggested a site plan and a budget to be able to move forward. So I think we have to work on getting a site plan and then who pays for that. I'm like not a construction person. I went to law school. My degrees are in sociology and criminal justice. Like I theoretically understand what a site plan is. I'm not a site plan person. So I think I'm going to talk to the sheriff and hopefully he's been talking to Granger. I haven't made those contacts, but hopefully he can talk to them. Other counties are on the same bandwagon now, Traverse City. Everybody wants to utilize this raise the age funding because it is 100%. And they're willing to fund pretty well anything that you can make fit this very specific guideline. They did not bat an eye. When I called the first time, I said, yeah, like $5 million. And they were like, yeah, okay. Then we talked to Granger and Granger says, well, you're closer to $25 million now. So I called back and said, we talked and we have no actual bids, but they're talking 25 million. I don't want to spend 45 days on this. And they're like, yeah, if it's, related to 17-year-olds and incarceration, then yeah, I mean, that seems on point. So I know 2 other counties have already started production, Lansing, and I believe don't hold me to Eaton, but another county has, Ingham and I think Eaton County are actually building, they broke ground. Traverse City is doing a study, and I got one other on my listserv. Traverse City said 30 million, so.
Is that a region, looking at regional detention facilities?
Yes.
And that's what we're talking, not per county, it's a regional.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And that's certainly what we were thinking, that if, in my original conversation, when I approached the sheriff was, I need 6 beds out there. I need the ability to place 6 kids at that jail at the drop of a hat without disrupting everybody, without pulling my people out of bed, without the sheriff having to pull somebody in. And he said, if you need 6, we should probably plan for at least 12, maybe 20. And then when we talked to Raise the Age and then talked to Granger, it turned into, Granger has a 42-bed facility right now designed that we would be that much further ahead. My problem on this is my drop dead date, and that's the language I use. Don't put that in the notes. Raise the Age funding ends September 30th of 2024. And the Raise the Age, my contacts have been crystal clear that every bill needs to be paid by September 30th of 2024, or there will be no reimbursement. So that timeline is pretty tight to build a 42-bed facility. I'm optimistic by nature, and I think if we work with the right kind of contractor, I feel like building that jail, we probably identified some things we could do better. So we should maybe be able to speed it up out there. I also think if Granger knows that's where we're going, they may be in a position to help that. If everybody knows out of the gate, we have to have the last bill submitted by this day.
I am also generally speaking a glasses half full kind of person, but I got to tell you, on a commercial project, 24 months would be like an extraordinarily tight timeline. And this is less than 24 months to get it approved, to plan it, to bid it, to contract it, to finish it, to get your certificate of occupancy and to pay your last bill. I think it's a great project. I'm just speaking, but unless we can get some kind of an accommodation from the state that says that we can extend that timeline, it just makes me super nervous, and God bless the folks who are working on getting into
Well, and then
the
maybe we
places.
scale it back. Maybe we go back to the original idea, and maybe I go to Raise the Age and say I need 10 beds and we want to do them at the jail, and here's how we can build on locally at the jail, and it's not. My thought process originally was, you've got this brand new facility, so we know the infrastructure's there. They've got the great laundry facility. They've got the great kitchen. They already have the existing contracts for food. Can we build upon that? It'll all be reimbursable through the child care fund. So right now we'll get 50% back of expenses plus another 10 in indirect costs. But if that goes up to 75%, I need 2 locked doors between the adult inmates and where my kids reside.
I mean, Cash will know this too, but that building was designed for putting extension on that back wall on that far end to go through.
Yeah, and I think actually your better option is to continue going east with it.
Yeah.
Because of the roof lines.
Yeah. But I mean, it was designed with the plumbing and everything else to keep on going north if we had to go north to put another pod on. So that is there. All that plumbing is said is ready to go. It's just got to be extended back out. So, I mean, that's part of I don't know how big a building you need, but that'd be, again,
But I think when you
that'd be your quickest route.
facility, we need big. But if you talk about right now, when we have kids, we just had a kid there last night. When you have an alleged domestic or generally a big deal felony, usually involving firearms, we hold them over at the jail. And right now, there's a juvenile holdover room in the administrative part. I mean, right next to the offices. I'm sure Cash walks by and sees the kid. It's right there. And it does okay for one kid. And we've had a great relationship with the sheriff's office. They've been incredibly accommodating. But as our need increases, and we're going to get there, we're going to have 2 kids that simply can't be released and we have nowhere to place them. And then the jail's going to be forced to me and the jail are going to be forced to figure out what we're going to do. How are we going to protect the community and these youth? And I'm trying to get out ahead of that as much as I can. And if I can do it for zero taxpayer costs. Raise the Age will Raise the Age is funding Sheboygan, Presque Isle County is putting 2 beds on at their jail. It's costing them $500,000. And I spoke to Danielle and she said it's 100% Raise the Age. So it wouldn't be any cost. If I can work with the sheriff and get the 6 beds I want or need, it's not going to be a revenue maker for anyone. We're not going to farm out any beds to other counties, but it would give Alpena County the ability. And that's really what we're missing now too, and kind of why this is all in a downhill spiral a little bit, is because we used to have the ability to respond immediately. That you've violated probation, you went out, you got drunk last night, we can pick you up, we can take you to the Sioux Tribe, you can spend 2 days in secure detention for $240 county dollars and then come home. And the kids knew it, like, oh, no, I'll go to lockup if I do that. And now they know there is no lockup for us to take them to because they're all full, or not taking any kids out of county. So whatever direction this goes, my firm belief is the county and the juvenile court need at least 6 beds out there. And I feel like we have to utilize the Raise the Age funding to do it.
Whatever's decided, the clock is ticking, and I agree with Mary Catherine to do a standalone new project in 20 months from now. That would be surprising if they could get it done in that amount of time. However, as talk about the course of action of adding on to the current structure and up to 6 beds, timeline was probably a little more realistic and doable. But again, I don't want to be making any decisions, obviously, but there needs to be something done, and whether it's a committee, ad hoc committee or whatever, but something needs to be done relatively soon. Because we've heard this for at least for me, the last 6 months, you've been beating that drum, which is that you need to keep beating that drum for sure.
And I just don't know enough about construction contractors, even the process. Like I wouldn't even know how to prepare a bid to ask someone for help with this. So some of that is that just this is not in my wheelhouse. And I am already.
But keep beating that drum.
I mean,
it has to be.
Well, and I guess I would throw this back to the commissioners to say, you know, what we need for kind of from the staff perspective is this something that you guys have an appetite for, that we should continue spending time and energy to explore and to, you know, to make these calls and to work with the contractors and put something together? Is this something you have an appetite for at all? Because if it is, great. We'll keep pushing forward and seeing what we can come up with. If it's not something you have an appetite for, then better let us know now rather than later, so that there's not a lot of staff time and energy spent on.
I believe it is, because the amount of money we're spending now to ship these kids out.
Oh, yeah.
And then you'll never get a chance to get a facility or an add-on to a facility funded by the state. We can't do it. We can't afford to do it ourselves, but with state funding, we should be able to do it.
Yeah, can't afford
And
it.
I just think we just Mary Catherine, get an ad hoc committee together with the sheriff and Janelle and figure out, how that can be added onto that building. I know it can be, because that was part of the plans, when we designed it.
Do you want me to add that onto the agenda? Well, actually, we've already put the packet out.
I mean,
You could amend the agenda on.
in the agenda and put it on there.
Create an ad hoc committee.
Yeah. That sound all right, Cash?
So the only thing I would add is that, so I guess if we're gonna add to the agenda, the real thing is getting the site plan going.
Yeah.
Because then we know what we're looking at. So if we could get approval to do a site plan, would actually put us ahead a little ways. At least they can look at it and say, yes, this is an option, or this isn't.
Right, but when you ask them to drop a site plan, you need to tell them, are they drawing up a site plan for a 40 bed? Are they drawing up a site plan for a 20 bed? Are they drawing up a site plan for 10? That's.
Well, I guess it depends, so like when we went and saw the Midland facility, they only housed 20, but how many beds did they keep for themselves?
I think the 20 was their in-county. I think they were, because they had the 2 and then they had the other.
So basically, they would house some out, and that would pay for their
Yes.
own county
Right.
people that were there. So, and I would say we can't look at this and build for today. We have to build for the future. So you always want to put more than what you need today, because otherwise it's just an addition that will be outdated in 10 years.
Right.
And I think there is enough kids if we wanted to if take out of county residents or juveniles, there's enough kids to fill it. And I think you could do 40, but, maybe we looked at something like 20 or 25.
I think that would be something for the ad hoc committee to discuss on that. Where to start.
Yeah.
I have a question. What is juvenile ages?
It's 18 now. We, up to 18, 2 years ago, I think last fiscal year, the legislature, they call it the Raise the Age Initiative. And Michigan was one of a few states who at 17 treated 17-year-olds in the adult system. And so the legislature did a complete overhaul and upped it, that raised the age to 18. So we now have youth from, I think the youngest kid we've ever seen was 7 up to 18. So because we have to keep these youth an extra year, they came up with money to back the legislation, which we all appreciate, to help offset those costs for courts. But what we've seen is and it was perfect storm for someone, but terrible timing. October 1 of last year, Raise the Age was going into effect. So the 17-year-olds all stay now. And the 3 months leading up to, we had 4 big facilities close. We had a Wolverine's Cure facility closed, Muskegon River closed, Star Commonwealth closed. All these facilities, it's hundreds of beds we lost in the months leading up to, oh, by the way, they all stay another year. So every county is in this position, not just us, which I think is why everybody else is doing this same thing.
Those that you mentioned were long-term facilities, were they not? Or
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah. So are you talking long-term facility or are you talking short-term detention facility?
I think for Alpena County, we're going to need a mix because you've got a handful of kids and we have been, and I'm coming up on 8 years here. I did treatment foster care prior to that. But what we're seeing because of the lack of available beds, when you've got a kid who is in need of treatment but can't get a bed, we're doing the best to keep a handle on him here, but it's not unusual that we would have to house him for 6 months until a bed opens up at the facility that treats him. We also have an increasing number of what are called permanent court wards. They have no legal parents. Rights have either been terminated or parents have voluntarily released. And those kids are always priority beds. For Alpena County, if we had the ability to hold them here, waiting for a foster home, waiting for an independent living facility, the Department of Health and Human Services, and I promise you our referee, would be ecstatic. Because what we end up doing with these permanent wards, like it's not a sad enough story that for whatever reason they don't have legal parents, we end up bouncing them around from home to home to home, facility, because we don't have a good fit, but we got a bed here, so we have to take it and get him there. And so we had a young man that aged out, and I think my last count was 27 placements over 6 years at 18 years old and no parents. You're going to be shocked to hear he ended up in district court. He was at the shelter. Mr. Allen and I were leaving work one day. He was sitting across the street. Bobby and I got him a hotel room for 3 nights to help him get somewhere, but we're only seeing increases in things like that. And if we had the ability to have put him at a facility that we run, that are going to be run by people like us, and we know this kid's not a delinquent, you're going to have staff that take a shine to him, make sure he has shoes, make sure he has good food, instead of dropping him. His last placement was on the east side of Detroit at a place called Calumet Center. It literally was a cinder block building with razor wire around it in arguably one of the more dangerous neighborhoods in Detroit. They would bring him up here for hearings and laugh at us country folk. Like, just, those car doors aren't even locked out there. How do you even know that? Like, why would you? And I don't know if we did a disservice to him. I mean, we still go back and forth. So I think it would be a combination.
Okay.
Danelle, on this grant funding, is that reimbursable? Or will they pay it?
It's reimbursable. So we have to put the money up first and then pull it back.
I'm talking about on the build. If we had
Yes, that's the same.
Same thing?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm required to back up everything with the ledger showing it was paid.
Okay.
But will they, you probably don't know this, if they pay off invoices or we have to show them a paid
invoice, like.
paid invoice,
Yes,
not
it has
just
to show on the
not just a
ledger
bill.
from the treasurer. No, not just the bill.
That'd be-
No, we have to, I'm required every month to upload the ledger and show which expenses were raise the age eligible, and then they reimburse us.
There was a note from the treasurer Ludlow. She just wanted to pass along a note in the Zoom that the general fund appropriated $335,780 to the childcare fund this year. Last year it was $209,691. So there was an increase 2023 over 2022, but I know a lot of that comes back in reimbursements, right?
Yeah.
So. Okay. So if there is an ad hoc group committee that is appointed at full board, then, by the end of next week, we could be, getting that committee together and starting to make some plans, including, if it's Granger or some other design build firm that we could be working with.
We have to put a ad for,
At the point at which we decide to actually contract with somebody, yes, but for, many of those companies are interested in doing initial consultations in the hopes of getting your business. So they might do a first couple of meetings.
okay. So do we make a motion on going ahead and forming that ad hoc committee?
I'll make that motion. We go ahead and form a ad hoc committee to put the,
Okay, we have a motion, I have a second by Jesse. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, discussion? Hearing none, motion passed.
We just gotta stop kicking the can down the road, give her a decision.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
But you didn't expect that to come out of this, did you?
You never know. If I've learned anything over the years, it's anything can happen. I've got sweetie pies to pick up, so I have to go, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, that was interesting. Ambulance fund childcare, ambulance fund money report was received and filed. Medical examiner's report and filed. Other discussion. I do have one thing I want to ask Eric. At what age do they go into these facilities, and at 18 they go out, or,
Well.
I think she might have misunderstood me. Pardon?
You become an adult at that point.
At 18?
Yeah, so you can't be in
Oh.
a juvenile facility.
So then, but what age can they go in?
Well,
There's no bottom limit.
Yeah.
It's not statutorily. So that's going to be up to the judge and the recommendation of the prosecutor. And
Okay, because that, I don't,
unfortunately, some of them are very young who end up in those.
When they actually did the raise the age legislature, we had testimony. I believe the youngest that I heard them testify on was 4 years old. I mean, it's really sad.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it is.
that's awful. That's just,
And part of it is a failure of the foster care system, but that's a whole nother discussion. Just very quickly in regards to the medical examiner's report, we'll see if you've reviewed your materials for the board meeting next week, that there are a couple of budget adjustments that we will be asking for in regards to the medical examiner's budget. There were a couple of things that came in late in 2020, bills that came in that were 2022, but they came in late. And so we're just going to be asking to roll some money forward from that 2022 budget to the 2023 so that we can make sure that we cover those and they don't impact the 2023 budget. And it confused me. I don't know if you noticed, she moved the line item of autopsies to examinations. I was very confused. There was nothing budgeted for autopsies, and I thought that's very interesting, but it got moved over into examinations. So there is in fact money budgeted for that service, just. Okay.
all right. Any other discussions? Huh? Public comment? Anybody?
Be online.
Okay, the next meeting is February 16th at 4 o'clock in the Howard Meal Conference Room.
Make a motion, Jared. Second.
Okay, motion, second, support, I mean,
All in favor?
all in favor. I'll get used to it.
I don't think you have to take the vote, right?
We
You
don't
motion
have to
second,
do
you
that, I
just
know
adjourn.
it,
Yeah, we
but
just-
I do, didn't
Yeah,
I?
that's right.
Okay. Motion adjourned.
Adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned. Well,